Shalom and welcome to the weekend edition of the Daily Dose of Hebrew. We're looking today at Jeremiah chapter 4, verse 20. Starting in the last verse, verse 19, we saw that we're listening to Jeremiah's personal lamentation, his cries of anguish as he watches in his vision the destruction that's about to come upon his people. He's going to continue that today in verse 20. Let's go ahead and read the text in Hebrew as we get started. Shever al shever nikra, ki שודדה כל הארץ, פתאום שודדו אוכלי, רגע יריותי. Start by this word shever, which comes from a verb shavar, which means to break or to shatter in the PL, and shever is a noun which means something, a shattering. It could even mean a breach, as we'll see in a certain context, but this is a shattering upon shattering, crushing upon crushing, and nikara. And nikara is either a perfect, would be a 3ms, definitely a nifal with the nin, the nun, and the hirik at the very front of it, from the verb kara, which means to announce or to proclaim or to call. So this would be in the nifal, to be called. But by the same form, it could also be a participle and be a masculine singular participle, still a nifal from the same verb. And in either case, I don't think there's a whole lot of difference, because if it's a perfect, it's not shattering upon shattering has been called, but it's being called, because Jeremiah is obviously seeing this vision unfold in front of him, the destruction of the city. And so the perfect with its definitive sense of being fulfilled, and the participle of something that's being ongoing. In any case, it's something that Jeremiah is seeing right in front of him. So shattering upon shattering is proclaimed, is announced, because shudada. Now this is going to be a perfect, going to be a 3fs, and this is a pual. You see the kibbutz that's under here, and the doubling hardagish and the dalet that's there. So this is a pual, and shadad means to be devastated in the pual especially. So it's to be devastated in the 3fs, because the subject is all the land. So all the land is devastated or has been devastated. We would use that as an English perfect with ongoing conditions, so you could almost translate that as a present, is devastated. And this is why all this proclamation is being made here. And then what else does he see? Pitom. Now this is one of these rare quadriliteral roots in Hebrew, where there's actually 4 letters here instead of 3. But this is an adverb which means suddenly. So all of a sudden, or suddenly, shudadu almost looks like the same verb, and it is just parsed a little bit differently. Shudadu. This is a perfect, and this is going to be a third common plural. And again, it's a pual, same structure with the kibbutz and the dagish there. So it's they are devastated. Well, what are devastated this time? Well, this time it's ocholai. You see the suffix here, so this is going to be a suffix, first common singular suffix for a plural noun, an ohel, which is a tent, like a tabernacle type of tent. And this would normally be ohelim. Ohelai is with the suffix on it. So my tents. Now, my tents, Jeremiah is speaking more than just his own personal tents, but he's talking about the tents of his people. So you can see that strong identification of Jeremiah with his people. So suddenly my tents have been devastated. In other words, the habitations, especially of the nomadic peoples. And rega, which is a noun which means a moment or an instant, but usually used as an adverb, in an instant. It's used like that in modern Hebrew as well. In an instant. Yariotai, well, this is usually yariyah with just a hay on it, which means a curtain, like the curtain of a tent, not the curtain of a little window, but the tent curtain. And you have this ot because it's feminine plural, and then I with this suffix on it here, which is your first person common singular suffix again. So it's my curtains, my tent curtains, and with the implied idea of the same verb being repeated more or less, so they are destroyed as well. So my tents are destroyed in an instant, my curtains as well. Let's go ahead and hide our work here and look at a couple different translations. First of all, in the Christian Standard Bible, disaster after disaster, shever El shever, on disaster, shattering on shattering. And this could even be the shattering of like a breach being made in the city wall. Or maybe it's a more general sense of disaster like the CSB has here, is reported for this one, Nikra. Why? Because the whole land is destroyed. Very straightforward translation. Suddenly my tents are destroyed, my tent curtains in a moment. So very literal translation as we walk through the Christian Standard there. ESV in a similar way, but they've kind of developed this a little bit more. Crash follows hard on crash. So crash is a good translation of shever, crushing. Crash upon crash. So is announced. So they've developed that into the idea of follows hard. They've not picked up the idea of being announced. That actually is reported, might be a good idea, because if you actually have the messengers who are running back and forth throughout the city reporting what has happened in this part of the city, what's happened in the other part of the city. Reporting might be actually, or announcing might be the right word to use. Where this is kind of, ESV's kind of left that out a little bit, but it still has the same idea. Crash follows hard on crash. The whole land is laid waste. Suddenly my tents are laid waste, my curtains in a moment. So pretty straightforward there. And then much more of a paraphrastic with the New Living Translation. Waves of destruction roll over the land. So again, they've picked up that idea quite well of crash upon crash or disaster upon disaster. They have not picked up the idea of it being reported, which I think is sort of a little nuance that's there because you hear the messengers crying out. Until it lies in complete destruction, the land here is the it over here. It lies in complete destruction. Suddenly my tents are destroyed. In a moment my shelters, and they've added the verb, are crushed. Certainly as part of the, is to be understood, but it's not directly in the text. It's a devastating thing what the prophet is seeing in his vision, and he feels it very strongly. It's, again, not just his own personal tragedy, but the tragedy for his people, because he loves them so dearly, even though they've been so stubborn and obstinate before the Lord. So check back with us soon as we continue working through chapter 4 in the weekend edition of the Daily Dose of Hebrew. Shalom.